Hi, and welcome to Complete and Cast, the official podcast for Complete and Box video games. Today, at episode 66, we're hitting game review number 22. Can you believe it, Parker?
Woo! I like that 66 out of 22 is a factor of, or whatever.
Wow.
Divides into.
Let's end this right now and just say we're all good to go. We are good to go.
Also, can you have me back on in 3 episodes?
Nice. I mean, I since considering I do these so seldom, probably.
Yeah.
All right, so this is number 22 of the gaming stuff we've done. We've done the first 3 Darksiders games, Resident Evil 5, 6, 7, Revelations 2. Both Outcast games,
yeah.
Outlast.
Outcast. I would play an Outcast game. Even if it was a beat game, I'd play that.
I think we all are. Life is Strange 1 and 2, and then some other stuff, Doom and all that kind of stuff. But the one series we've actually done everything so far, and we're gonna finish off with the newest iteration today is the Batman series for the PS3/PS4. And today we're going to take a look at Batman Arkham Knight.
Arkham Knight.
Now, before we get into this, I want to go into a couple of things real quick. First of all, revisionist history in video games is a thing.
Yes.
And I mean, just look at GameCube right now. GameCube is the hottest system on the market, and I guarantee, when the system first came out, it was A, not that popular, unless you were playing Smash or Mario Kart, and B, people made fun of it, and the Wind Waker, cel-shaded graphics, and all that stuff. But now, in 2020, GameCube is the best thing of all time and all this stuff.
I mean, I remember not too long ago, people were down on Sunshine.
Yeah.
I remember and now it's people talk about Sunshine like it's some sort of crowning jewel higher than some other games.
Well, there's a lot of people that would put it as the best Mario game, and we're not talking 20 years ago. We're talking 10 years ago, 7 years ago, that people were like, Sunshine's okay, and now Sunshine's the greatest thing.
Right.
So
it's crazy.
Again, the reason I bring this up is when Arkham Knight came out, it didn't get bad reviews, but it was the general consensus was it was okay. It wasn't as good as Arkham City. We're here to talk about that and to see if we agree with that. Now, the other piece of information I'm going to give you, I went through all 21 of our previous reviews.
Okay.
And believe it or not, Arkham City is actually the highest rated game.
I do believe that because it is really good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I thought it would be something like Doom or maybe Life is Strange or whatever.
I feel like individually maybe I might have ranked Doom higher, but just me.
I have a little more information for you if that's okay with you.
Okay.
So I like stats. So let's start with the Arkham series first and just really briefly go over how we graded them. Arkham Asylum, I gave it an overall score of 7.9, which before we go any further, generally mid to high 7s is very good. 8 is extremely good, and 9 is, well, nothing's ever gotten an overall 9 for us.
Exactly.
So we're relatively tough on this stuff. So a lot of times you'll hear 7.9 and you go back to a Kotaku or IGN and be like, oh, that's bad. No, a 7.9 for us is pretty good. Anything over 8 is a very good game. So anyway, Arkham Asylum, I gave it a 7.9. Parker gave it an 8.25. Arkham City, which was our highest one, I gave an 8.5, which I believe was the highest game that I gave. And Parker gave it an 8.33, which is his highest, and I'll go into that in a second. And then Arkham Origins went down below the others. I gave it a 6.58, and Parker gave it a 4.92.
Yeah, I was mad at that one.
Arkham Origins, as we all know, is an okay game, but it's not nearly as good as the other ones.
It's made by a different company completely. Yeah. So it's very odd.
I mean, I'm glad it exists just because it's more Batman, but it's not that great. Now, Parker's second highest score, it was very close, was Doom 2016, where he gave an 8.3 compared to Arkham City's 8.33.
0.03 difference. Got it.
Yeah, so that's enough stats and everything. I just kind of want to set the table for where we're coming from as far as this game is concerned.
Yeah.
So
that's
Arkham
great.
Asylum, very good. Arkham City, classic. Arkham Origins, okay.
Yeah.
Really quickly, we base our scores on 6 different categories out of 10. We have story, gameplay, graphics or atmosphere, sound, fun factor, and replayability.
And sound not only includes voice acting, but also music, background music, just kind of all together.
Yep. We say sound because some older games, if we would play them, might not necessarily have voice acting, or even indie games and stuff like that. So it's just the whole presentation. And we take all of that out of 10. And by the way, because it's our rules, we can increment by 0.25, because why would you not? That's one thing I always loved about Game Informer. They'd be like 9.75, which to me is like, it's amazing, but it's not the all-time classic, which is like, that's great. And then we just divide them by 6, and that's the total. So, let's start in, because we're about 5 minutes in, and we haven't even talked about Arkham Knight yet. Let's get into the story. Parker, you played it more recent than me. Let's just give a very quick, brief synopsis of what's going on.
So, one thing I'll say quick, if you are a comic fan, the overall story is going to be a little... I mean, obviously, they created a story for the video game, but I will say... it's a strong adaptation of an existing story. So if you're very familiar with comics, you'll kind of get the, like, reveal way earlier than you should. Because it's like, oh, this is that. And not that it's a bad thing, because it's still cool to see it and play in it. But they definitely build it up, like, as a reveal. And it you know, is a little bit of a letdown. Because you're like, yeah, okay, obviously that's what it is. But...
and to me, I actually did not know the comic, so it was a reveal to me, although I had ideas.
But I will say that, like, even if you're into the comics, but like in the original animated series, they told this story about the Red Hood. So like you just might be familiar with it, just as a little bit of a caveat. But basically, what happens is, obviously, it starts out with Joker being cremated, and they're driving it home that Joker is dead. And so... right off the bat, you might go, oh no, like, Joker's, like, obviously one of the best characters in the series, and to lose him, especially with his amazing voice acting done by Mark Hamill, is kind of like, oh no, like, are we gonna go a whole game without Joker? Well, luckily, no, because Batman is plagued with Joker in his head for pretty much the whole game, and there's this kind of subplot throughout the whole game that the Joker, like, took the blood that was infected with the Titan formula from the previous game, Arkham City, and he sent it out to a bunch of hospitals, and a bunch of people got infected. And so then there's now all these, like, Jokers that Batman had to collect. Now, this happened before the game starts. So when the game starts, you're Batman, you're seeing Joker. He just appears and starts talking to you and kind of talks to you through, like, really emotional moments. And also, there's these Jokers that you have currently contained while you're trying to find a cure. And so it's like this really interesting subplot that's going on. And then in the main plot, Scarecrow is now the big bad. And the cool thing about this, as each game grows, Arkham's Asylum was just the island where they were on. Arkham City was one small island in Arkham, in Gotham, that was, like, given to the criminals. And so you have, like, this big area, much bigger than Arkham Asylum. This is all of Gotham. You get the entirety of Gotham. And that's really cool because it really opens up things a big amount. So you're fighting against Scarecrow, who's, like, constantly threatening to release gas and toxin to, like, destroy everything, just like Scarecrow usually does. But Scarecrow ends up enlisting a outside mercenary military group headed by a guy named Arkham Knight, and Knight. So he's like this guy. He has a outfit that sort of looks like Batman, but is all super upgraded and, like, crazy. And he apparently, according to all his exposition, knows every move of Batman's and has trained all his squadron to take you down, and has, programmed all of his AI-controlled things to also take Batman down specifically. And so you spend the game trying to take down Scarecrow and Arkham Knight, but then also, Poison Ivy shows up because she can help you. Her plants can help clear up the toxins, so you got to work with her a bit. Penguin kind of shows up, and Nightwing, previous Robin, comes back to help you track down Penguin. Your current Robin, who I'm trying to remember who current Robin is in this one. It's...
Let me just say real quick, why is Nightwing automatically so much cooler than Robin?
Yeah.
In any incantation.
He is much
it's just
cooler.
funny, like, it doesn't matter which Robin, you're like, that's fine. But then it's like, oh, Nightwing. It's like, I don't even care who Nightwing is. Like, it's just Nightwing. I think it has to do with the name and his look. It's just so much cooler.
Yeah, absolutely. So the current Robin is... I had it up.
Stalling for content.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. Anyway, so there's basically this game, or the storyline revolves a lot around Robins because Nightwing comes back and he was the original Robin, and he went off to do his own thing in a nearby town, Bloodhaven. So he comes back to help you with Penguin, and then your current Robin is helping you try to track down the Jokers and blah blah blah. Then the other side plot that kind of mixes in is Oracle, who is Commissioner Gordon's daughter, who originally was Batgirl, but got attacked by Joker and shot, and she lost, like, she was paralyzed basically from the waist down, and she became Oracle, who is kind of like your man in the van, as they say. But your person that, like, basically you say, look this up, and then she just is like, blah, 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 you know, I'm in. Yeah. Click, 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 I'm in. So she's helping you, and her and your current Robin are dating / engaged. So whatever. And at one point, she basically, under the effects of Scarecrow toxin, shoots herself. And it's a scary reveal, and you're like, oh no, blah, blah, blah. It ends up that she's fine as the story goes on, because you track her down for like a lot of the story, and then there's this really emotional moment where she kills herself, and you're like, oh, what in the like, this is crazy. And so then you are still working with Robin, who's fiance, and you're not telling him because you want him to, like, keep working on his cure, and it gets really tense.
I should also point out that this is the only Batman game that's rated mature.
Right.
The rest of them are all rated teen, to my knowledge, and this one is definitely rated mature. So,
sure.
As you can tell from what Parker's saying, it could have gotten a teen, maybe, but it's definitely more than the others.
I will say, though, because it was mature and this happened, I was really really sure that they actually did it, and I'm like, wow, what a like finale to, like, start killing off characters and really have Batman struggle with the emotional weight of, like, doing his life's work is trying to save Gotham, and he's like, also because you're seeing Joker, you realize you're infected with Joker blood, so you know that your time is almost done, and you're just kind of, like, going through this whole thing of, like, Batman's really wrapping it up, like, he's really tying up loose ends in a really spectacular way. But I'll say about 3/4 of the way through, it's revealed that she didn't kill herself. It was fake, and it was made to look that way because of Scarecrow's toxin. So that was I'll say a little bit of a letdown, because it was not that I wanted her to die, but just that I was like, they just kind of did the comic book thing of like, it was all trick. Especially anytime Scarecrow's involved, or like anytime if you play a Spider-Man game and Mysterio's involved, it's like, yeah, nothing's real. It's nothing's gonna actually happen. But so that was it. So then the big reveal that leads up to it is that this Arkham Knight, who you're fighting through the whole game, is actually Jason Todd, who was the Robin in between the Nightwing Robin, the Dick Grayson, and your current Robin, who his name escapes me at the moment. He was the one in between, and he was supposedly captured by Joker and killed. And Batman, like, was sure that he was killed and always just sought vengeance against Joker because of it. And it turned out that Joker just brainwashed him through torture into this kind of like Punisher like vigilante, just filled with revenge. who is 100% directed at Batman. After the big reveal, Batman and Todd kind of have like a sort of like he basically brings Todd back from the brink where Todd's just out for blood on Batman. And what it does is it causes the Red Hood Jason Todd to slowly come to the good side, but he's still Punisher level good side where he will murder people. He is not Batman. He will absolutely gun down anyone that he needs to in order to protect the innocent. And he does not go like, well, this guy should live. Oh, he's not cutting. Like he's just, that's it. He's got guns and he's military trained, and that's that. So it all just leads up to you eventually. You take down you tie up all your loose ends with all of the villains in Gotham, and once you do, you can activate what is called the Nightfall Protocol. And when it does, it basically, in this culminating scene with Scarecrow on live TV reveals who Batman is, and everybody knows. And for the last quarter of the game, you basically, when you hear the radio chatter, everybody's talking about wait, Batman's Bruce Wayne, that rich, idiot? What are you talking? What are you kidding me? And they're all just whatever, and everybody's like, oh, Bruce Wayne's gonna get it bad this time, all this stuff. And the Nightfall Protocol that you eventually get to enact once you've tied up all your loose ends, basically explodes Wayne Manor right after you walk into Wayne Manor with your Batman costume on and your mask off. And you're walking in, and they're, all the press is there, and they're like, Mr. Wayne, blah, blah, blah. And he walks in, and then 2 seconds later, all of the Wayne Manor, it just explodes into this great fiery explosion. And so the assumption is, something happened, it made it look like some sort of terrorist destroyed, Wayne Manor once it was revealed it was Batman. But obviously it's Batman all along, and he's able to, in some way operate outside of things just like normal because everybody thinks he's dead. And so kind of leaves the door open, but at the same time, it also could end the chapter because there's a lot of moments of Batman handing off the mantle to, Robin and Azazel and all these other good characters to try to be like, what, you guys will have to take care of this in my absence. And so, yeah, that kind of wraps up the storyline. So, obviously, because the Arkham games, Arkham City was the same, there is a pseudo main storyline, but it branches off in a lot of different directions. So, and you can play them in any order. So sometimes the story comes in drips and drabs and is all over the place. And there's lots of little side stories and Easter eggs.
Well, so that's the general takeaway from open world games, at least for me.
Yep. Sure.
The story is never going to be as mainstream as a linear game, and that's just one of the things you just have to deal with.
Right, and because you're never no two people, unless they're really, really just like-minded, are going to get the same gameplay when it comes to story. Because if somebody decides to play a certain part of the story a lot farther, then other parts of the story kind of are just you just speed through them because now you're leveled up a lot more. And so you don't really get the effects of slow storytelling as you build your character. When you get to the end game and you're just super powerful and now you just got to tie up loose ends, it's just oh yeah, that happened. Oh yeah, that happened. You're just kind of speeding through story points. So it's kind of depending on how you play it, you're going to get a different way of telling the story.
So yeah, my real quick thing to finish up on the story is my favorite parts are Joker's, just being there.
It's so good.
And
him showing up was just
him just
so
showing
good.
up, and a lot of times it's very random where
Yep.
you'll be and then you'll just be there, and all of a sudden you'll hear him,
Yep.
and then you just turn to the side and he's there, and obviously you can't do anything because it's just a figment of your imagination. So that's great. And then of course it's very difficult, although it's much easier in games than in movies, to incorporate a lot of characters into something and not have it become a mess. You look at Suicide Squad or Justice League, the movies, where they're here's a bunch of characters, and you're ugh. But then you look at like Marvel, which plays the long game, and they're like, here's this character, just this one character. And yeah, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not so good. But at the very least, then when you have like an Avengers, it's like, oh, I understand who all these people are.
Because you had this.
It's easier to do it in games because you have more time, but I feel that they did that pretty well in this, where you're not just like, what's this character? You know, like why are they? You know, whatever.
I will say that I at least was like following along when new characters were introduced. The one thing that I'll say about story with this, and I guess it sort of goes along with sound, but sometimes story exposition happens and there's other stuff kind of happening, because there's lots of times where there's like radio chatter or different characters on screen are just talking, but then like you're talking to Alfred and he's expositioning you, and there's background music, and it gets kind of garbled where you're like, my brain is hurting, like there's a lot going on right now, and I'm getting like, I'm getting like overwhelmed to where like I just need a moment to like really listen to what one person is saying, because I want to understand the story. And like that was a little bit tough, because they're trying to tell you a lot of stories sometimes in like a very short amount of time, and then people are talking over each other, and you're just like, dude, I'm a little bit overwhelmed,
So overall, out of 10, what are you looking at for story for Arkham Knight?
So I would give it a 7.75 out of 10, because I did like the story a lot. It was well told. Some of the side stories were really cool. Like there's a side story with Harley Quinn, because obviously she's back for revenge against for you killing Joker. Also, there's the Man Bat, so you have to kind of help the guy that turns into a half man, half bat, and then there's of course the Riddler subplot, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit more in gameplay. But his storyline itself, if you take the time to do the gameplay, which some people might find tedious, it does have a pretty decent payoff later. So it's kind of cool in that regard, but.
And I'm a little bit higher than you, just because I will always be a little biased on Batman stuff. I'm thinking 8.25.
Nice.
Pretty solid story. I don't remember exactly what I gave Arkham City. There's definitely more involved, and we're gonna compare City and Night a lot in this. There's definitely more involved, because it's one of those things where like it has to like end, or at least show an ending.
Right.
Whereas Arkham City was like, yeah. Well, I guess they also like kind of ended that as well. But there was a lot of loose ends. There was.
It's very clear in City that there was going to be another game.
Yeah. Now that I think about it,
this doesn't seem like there's going to be another game.
Yeah, there was a lot of loose ends. And if they do another game, they probably just reboot it or whatever, which is fine. That's what Batman's all about. Is like,
for sure.
I don't mind when they reboot, it in movies every 10 years or in comics every 5 years or whatever. So yeah, 8.25 for me. So heading over to gameplay real quick. The last one of the big ones we talk about. So it's more of what you would expect from City and Asylum, maybe not so much Origins.
Right.
It's a beat 'em up brawler with a lot of elements of sneaking, a lot of elements of climbing through vents.
Yep.
But
it does open it up to how you want to play.
Yes.
Because you can go brawler style and just kind of fly in and do a bunch of button mashing combos, or you can take the stealth approach and do like Metal Gear Solid like espionage type thing.
And that's the thing I like about this combination. Whereas in like a Metal Gear Solid or say Dishonored, which unfortunately I tried playing Dishonored and do not like it at all. Those ones or the original Splinter Cell, you have to hide.
Yep.
Like it just there's no way else around it.
Yep.
But with this one, it's like not that you necessarily can always go into big rooms and just like bam, 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 but like. It's usually an option if it's going to be a little harder, maybe, than doing the sneaking kind of part, but it is an option, and it's a really good blending.
Yes.
It reminds me almost like, and I haven't played much of them, but from what I understand of some of the early, not the first, but maybe Assassin's Creed 2 and 3 or 4, where it's like, you could, but you're not like instantly dead. Assassin's Creed 1, from what I understand, you have to hide, or else you're just dead. And it didn't, at that point, the series didn't have the kind of mixture to have that, but so that's the main thing with that. It's more of the same of that. I will say it's very smooth in terms of the battling. It's pretty much, from what I remember, a 1-button or maybe a 2-button brawler. but they do it very well because you're
There's
able
a lot
to...
of combos. So,
Yeah,
like, you only have, like, one punch, but then you're including all your gadgets, which would be, like, pressing L1 and X, or R2 and X, or, whatever. And so, like, that's where you start to, like, learn. And it's really what you want to play. Like, it's your like, style. Like, it leaves itself open to what you would want.
Yeah. And like I said, it's very smooth switching between the different, like, you knock someone out and then you can go to the next one, and it's very cool.
Yeah.
The big thing they changed for this one, the big thing they added, which actually I find it hard to believe, but this is absolutely the case, is one of the main things people hated on when it first came out is the Batmobile.
Yeah.
So you can ride around the Batmobile a lot. A lot of things that you do specifically are set up for the Batmobile.
Right.
A lot of the extra... gameplay events that you do, side quests, specifically involve the Batmobile, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought that it controlled very well.
Yep.
I thought that they did a pretty good job of specifically doing things that involve the Batmobile. Something as simple as, like, I remember one, and it's going to be a little jarbled here, but, like, the enemies are, like, I don't know, on a parking complex, and you have to, like, use the Batmobile to, like, do, like, a suction plunger
big
thing.
Jump and then fly up. Yep.
And, like, fly up, or, like, blow
yourself up.
Blow out certain walls.
The pillars and things.
And it just adds another layer, whereas in the past, if you came to an area and you're like, okay, I can't punch this wall, so can I freeze it? I can't freeze it. Okay, can I blow it up?
Yep.
Now it's like you add an extra thing where it's like, oh, I could use this with the Batmobile.
Right.
And honestly,
the previous game was all about the gadgets you had.
When this game first came out, it was very, like, people in general did not super like, I talked to a lot of people who were like, I love the game, but I hate the Batmobile parts, and I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
I really, really enjoyed it, and I think it has the best gameplay of all 4 games. Right. I wish I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but, like, whatever I gave it in City, I would have to give it 0.25 or 0.5 higher, because I just feel like it's just awesome.
Yeah. I will say that, and with the Batmobile, just as a little extra thing, it's almost 2 Batmobiles, because there's one Batmobile for driving around, like, quickly, where you have, like, nitro boost, and it feels like playing, like, Burnout or something. Like it's not as perfect as a racing game, but it's really, really good. And it's not a tacked on thing by any means. They set out to make a game where you drive a car. Like, that was their intention, because it's very, like, well thought out and well executed. But there's the driving around,
and, then, like,
and it feels like fast, and then there's tank mode where you're actually can strafe, and it feels like way more like almost like just, I mean, it's third person, but, like, almost like first person shooter, like running around deathmatch, because you're, like, moving the way you would in, like, Quake or something, where you're, like, really fast paced, strafing and trying to dodge people as they're shooting at you, but you're in a big giant tank. And on top of it, with the tank mode, they created scenarios where you actually can play stealth, Metal Gear Solid like stealth in a tank, because your tank's very fast and you constantly, like, shooting down alleyways to get out of view of certain tanks, because there's these tanks that, like, you cannot shoot head on, so you basically have to outmaneuver them and get behind them and shoot, like, an exhaust port. And that makes it, like, just a whole nother level of gameplay for this, where it's not just like, okay, I'm just shooting all the guys as quickly as I can, or I'm driving as fast as I can to hit checkpoints. Now you're actually, like, outmaneuvering, like, tanks while there's multiple tanks on the screen, and that just added an extra level. So, like, the Batmobile is not only a whole another world of gameplay, but it's actually, like, another character. Like, the Batmobile almost is an extra character in the story. Like, the way it interacts with you, the way you can remotely control it, like, you could be inside a building, and then you go to a thing, and then now you're in the Batmobile outside.
It's
so cool.
It's like your helper. It's not just a piece of machinery.
It's
so
sidekick.
I really, really... Now, I played this originally when it first came out. Yeah. I don't know what it was, 2015 or something like that.
Right.
And Parker played this very recently.
Yes.
And it should be noted, this is a pretty early PS4 game.
Yeah.
So, you could even look at it and be like, well, if it has some shortcomings with this, it's an early one. It's like,
I would not have known.
I could have told you it came out last year, and you would have been fine with it. Like, and I hope that not liking the Batmobile stuff has kind of changed because like over time, because like I don't get it.
Right.
I'll say it this way, as far as the gameplay is concerned, because we've talked about this 3 times already, so we don't need to go on and on and on. You know, you can check out our Arkham Asylum or City or Origins thing for, you know, really to get into the gameplay. I don't want to make this last forever, but I did everything in this game, with the exception of the Riddler trophies, because at the time I was just like, they're
pretty tedious.
They're pretty tedious, and I don't have that attention span, but I did everything. I did every single side quest where it was like a battle melee with the Batmobile.
Right.
I did all the Man-Bat stuff and all this. I did everything because it was very enjoyable. And like I don't finish stuff in games that's super tedious. I guess with the exception of, unless it's like for a retro game I'm doing for LPs where I can be like, I did this to show it can be done. Yeah. But like for newer games where I'm playing just for fun and not doing them for the YouTube channel or a challenge or a Let's Play, I don't do it. Like, I loved FF7 Remake, for the most part, and I was like, once I finished it, I was like, I'm gonna master all the materia. Guess what I haven't done yet? Because it's like, you just get to the point where it's like very like, it's just grinding and grinding and grinding. I'm not that kind of person, but I finished everything in this.
Yeah, because it kept it fun, it kept it fresh. The one thing I'll say is that because I did play it more recently, every bit of DLC was released, and you could kind of buy a little package that was all the stuff that was extra story. And so I played a little bit more things than Spencer just because these weren't released when he first played it. And some of the extra story bits, like there's these kind of like extra story bits outside of it where you can play these mini stories centered around Harley or centered around Nightwing and Batgirl, or I mean, you know, Robin and Batgirl, or centered around Nightwing, or centered around whatever. And so you can, or Red Hood, which is Arkham Knight after he gets revealed. So you can play these like little side stories that are just kind of like extra, not necessary in any way to whatever. But there is one DLC which I will highly recommend if you haven't played this yet, and it's called Gotham's Most Wanted. And what it does is it creates 3 or 4 completely new side missions that integrate into the real game, and you basically get to fight Killer Croc, and you get to fight this other character who's like mutilating bodies and putting them around, and he's really, really creepy. He's this weird surgeon guy in like a pig mask, very creepy, and a couple other like side characters, but they integrate them into the story, and you can play them at any time. They don't like ruin any story or anything. But that was a highly recommended DLC because it really just gave you an extra bit of story. But one downside of adding the DLC was it opened up all these like AR challenges, which is like kind of like VR missions in like Metal Gear Solid and stuff, and there are a lot of them.
Oh, and I would never do those.
And they are very
so hard.
Annoying and very hard to get like the max score on. And like I tried to be like, oh, I'll do all these, and I lost steam very quickly. So like, you know, that being said, I did personally still do the Riddler stuff because that does still interest me. And luckily, unlike games like you know, Grand Theft Auto or other games where there's Easter eggs, where you basically are just forced to look at a guide online, the way the Riddler stuff works is as you're moving around the city, you'll see these little people highlighted in green or cars highlighted in green.
Right.
And those are Riddler informants. And if you go and get them and beat up all the people surrounding them and then interrogate them, they will reveal locations of Riddler stuff. So you get an idea of where something is, and you can just go find it then. Which made it really cool.
I probably got 50% done, but sometimes I would have the exact coordinates and still not find it, and that's the point.
Right.
You know, where it's like, here's the coordinates, and it's like this say it's like a 5-story high elevator, and you're like,
it's just literally in some like location, buried in. And I'll say that some Riddler trophies you can't get until you do certain missions
Yeah.
and stuff like
That's
that. And so
fair, though.
it just makes it like the kind of thing where you're like, you do have to kind of keep on top of it. But if you do, there is a great final fight with Riddler, which was really fun. You and Catwoman, who you have kind of been, there's another side story in here where you're helping save her throughout, and you and her team up to take Riddler down, and it is pretty fun, I'll admit. Like, to say it's worth the Riddler trophies, like, if you hate doing that kind of tedious stuff, like I know Spencer does, I would say no, it's not worth it. But if, like, you're even slightly, like, find that kind of stuff fun, it is worth it, because you do get a little extra bit of juice out of the storyline and gameplay, and it does make it a little bit fun. And there's a couple of puzzles and stuff that get unlocked in the later part of the Riddler story. So I do think it's worth it if you are not super averse to that kind of like.
It's weird. Arkham Asylum and City got Game of the Year editions, and the Game of the Year edition on the Arkham City, which, by the way, do you remember that box art? It's like the infamous box art where it has like a million text on it. It's just awful. Anyway, it didn't even add that much. Like, I did it, and it like added like a couple Catwoman things.
Yes.
It's very weird that Arkham Knight, which had to have sold well because we always have a bunch of copies at CIB. By the way, this game's like, I don't know what it goes for, like, standardly, but, like, you can find it for, like, 10, $15 bucks.
I mean, that's mine up at Green Dragon for 15 from
that's
George.
That's really great value.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm surprised they didn't come out with the Game of the Year, especially with how much companies love coming out with Game of the Years, and especially the fact that you said there's, like, some pretty decent DLC. That surprises me.
Yeah, it is really surprising. Like, I had to go in and buy it because there was no other way to do it.
Right.
And it was like 99 cents here, $4.99 there kind of thing. But so it is weird that there isn't just, like, one definitive collection.
So, yeah, I'm actually going to go first with the gameplay score here and say 8.75, which is probably one of the highest things I've given almost anything.
Yep.
It's just great. It just is. And the one downfall that a lot of early reviews that you'll read will say is, the Batmobile is like my shining star. Right. So it's like, if someone's like, it's great except for this, and I'm like, it's great and also this, then there you go, 8.75. It's awesome.
Yeah. So the one thing I'll say, I'm going to give it an 8.5, but the one thing I'll say, I would have given it a 9 if the combat and gadgets and the upgrade system was as kind of perfect as it was in City. I thought there was a few things just the combat and the stealth part. There was a few things that were not quite perfect, and I think they weren't quite perfect because a lot of the team was working on the Batmobile, and the Batmobile is perfect. Like, everything about the Batmobile and the upgrades and everything was dead on. But, like, having not too long ago played Arkham City, I was like, oh man, like, I got really good at the combat in Arkham City, and I never quite got the hang of some of the stuff I used to be able to do in this one. I don't know why. Like, I don't know why there was some sort of block, but I just didn't quite have the same flow or something. But anytime I just jumped in the Batmobile, I was like, okay, all's forgiven. So I would be giving it like a 9 if the combat was even just exactly the same as it was in City, but it was just a tiny bit on the downside. And I think it's only because they focused so much on that Batmobile that it was hard to, like, really give attention to every single detail in the game. So that's why I'm giving it an 8.5.
Okay, so next up we have graphics/atmosphere. It's just the whole visual presentation. Yep. And I guess the best thing you can say about it is it's an early PS4 game. It had to come out within the first year or so, year and a half, 2 years. And you can't tell.
No, you can't.
I'm currently playing a game, The Evil Within, which also came out around the same time. These games probably came out within a year of each other. The first one.
Okay.
And you can tell. Like, I just got done playing Last of Us 2 and FF7 Remake, and it's unfair to whatever, but, like, really, you can tell. Like, it's crazy. So, like, that compared to Batman Arkham Knight is like, whoa, that game runs at, like, 50... I still like Evil Within, and I'd like to do that as a thing sometime, but, like, that game runs at, like, 15 frames per second sometimes, and blah, blah, blah. This game runs really well.
It does.
And looks really well, and this is, again, we're playing on PS4, we're not playing on PC with ultra graphics. Although I heard the PC port of this one, I think it's this one, was like really weird, or at least it was when it first came out. It's one of the Batman games I remember being like infamously like weird. PC, go figure. The big thing that shines here, as it does in every Batman thing, is the atmosphere. They set it up great.
Yes.
Gotham is great. As Parker mentioned before, having like all like the radio chatter you get, and like just like kind of hanging out and hearing like criminals talking to each other.
And they talk based on what you've completed.
Yeah.
Like they'll sometimes be like, "Oh, yo, did you see that bat flying around?" Like when the Man-Bat storyline comes in, and it's like really makes you feel like you're part of the world.
It's so specific. It's not generic NPC stuff where it's like I'm a Riddler thug. You know, it's like really specific.
Anytime you're driving the Batmobile and you pass a car, it'll be like, "Oh, it's the Bat! Turn around!" And you always hear them getting upset. Even if you're not going to actually go follow them, they all freak out anytime you're around. And it just makes you so... Or sometimes if you get out of your car, they're like, "Hey, there's the Bat, let's go get him." And they start running towards you. And then you can call the Batmobile and it'll come swipe them. And it's like, it's just so satisfying. Like, all that you feel like you're part of the world.
I mean, it's just great. I don't know how even, like, to go into this anymore. It's just like, you feel it's dark, it's dingy, it's Gotham.
Right. Yep, it's Gotham.
It's like, it's the thing that good Batman comics, movies, and games and whatever else. Batman VR for PS4 VR. It's the thing that makes it better, in my opinion, than any other superhero thing.
For sure.
Which is just the setting and the atmosphere.
For sure.
Also, in my opinion, the characters are the best in Batman.
Yeah.
But, I was just thinking about that the other day, just because DC Comics, I forget if I told you, but they switched distributors.
Oh, really?
So they're not Diamond anymore.
Oh.
They changed over, and I never realized that like how much DC is Batman and the rest. Like, because like I'll get like we get two separate shipments now. So Marvel's like this stuff here and there, and I'm more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy, but it'll be like, oh, Star Wars, oh, Spider-Man, oh, Hulk, oh, all the Avengers stuff, okay, and then you get, our DC stuff in, and we only get what's popular for the most part, so it's like Batman, Nightwing, Batgirl, Batman Beyond, Harley Quinn, and then it'll be like Flash, like a couple issues of Flash or whatever. So it's just so funny how now when I get them separately, I'm like, yes. And like, if Batman doesn't come out that week because it's a bi-weekly thing, it's like, it's a rather small shipment, and then the next week it's like, Batman came out, okay, it's a bigger shipment because it's Batman. So yeah, that like I said, as far as atmosphere and everything, that's the whole reason, that's the whole thing game. And I enjoyed it just as much as the gameplay, so I'm actually going to give it the same review. I'm going to do a 8.75 on this, which again is phenomenal. I like rarely ever give 9s.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. I'm going to give an 8.75 as well, and my thing is because actually, in a little trivia is that the game I played just before this was Uncharted 4. And so I was coming off of Uncharted 4, which, like, if you've played that, or if you even just know, like, some of the news surrounding it, was, like, one of the prettiest games to ever come out on the PS4. Like, it's just ridiculous, some of the stuff that happens in that game. And how it looks when you're driving around and you see these, like, sweeping tropical landscapes and stuff. And I was also playing on my PS4 Pro, so, like, Uncharted 4 looked phenomenal, on my 4K TV. And then I went and started playing Arkham Knight, which is a game that came out, years prior. And it still was like, I was like, wow, this looks great. Like, I was not in any way like, oh, man, it looks like, you could tell, blah, blah. Like, I was just exactly what Spencer said. I was like, wow, this looks great. Like, if Spencer said it just came out, I would have been like, cool. Like, I would not have questioned it for a second. It looks excellent.
So, the sound, we almost went into this already with, like, all the ambient sounds and the people talking. The biggest thing to mention about the sound is the voice acting, which, again, is great.
Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as Joker.
And he wasn't Batman in Origin. I kind of forget how that went.
Yeah, I think he didn't.
Because that was a whole different thing. But he's back and he's great, and Mark Hamill's Joker, and he's great, and everyone's great, and like even it's just one of those eye tests, or I guess ear tests, where it's like you're literally on the streets and like you hear a random thug, and it's not Mark Hamill, but like it's pretty good. It's like, hey yo, it's like good. It's so good. And you're like, okay, if like this random thug, and I'm sure they used a couple different guys or whatever to voice these thugs, is like really good, then everything else is going to be good. Like it's just not a thing. So
and the two other characters that are really really good voice acting besides them is Harley Quinn is Tara Strong, who did it in the animated series and the previous Batman games, and she's perfect as Harley Quinn. Like she's like, as much as I like what's her name from Suicide Squad, like portrayal of Harley Quinn, like Tara Strong's animated series like Harley Quinn is just.
Well, I think that's the one that everyone thinks of when they say Harley. Is they think of that, at least that
like, hey,
voice.
At
least that voice.
Perfect, like cutesy voice. Excellent. And the other one is Scarecrow is actually voiced by John Noble, who you might know from Denethor in The Lord of the Rings. He's the guy who's like looking over the Gondor, the White City, and he's the guy who tries to light himself on fire with his son and like jumps off the tower.
It's been a while, but I'm sure he's awesome.
And he's also in another show that was really good on Fox. And he's been in a bunch of stuff, and and his voice is perfect, and he plays Scarecrow, and it's very, very like overbearing and scary because he's like, Batman, you could not defeat, and it's just so dead on perfect, especially as compared to Joker, who's just like chaos. This guy is like a lot more composed, and even though he's wreaking chaos on the world, he's like has a purpose, and so it's really, really well done.
DC is so weird because with this game, like DC, it's WB Games, but obviously DC has it, and WB does a lot of Batman stuff. It's like they get these perfect people for this game, but then they'll like come out with a movie and like just make Will Smith Deadshot, and it's just like, who can we get? And it's like, I don't even get it. Like I guess it's like that's the big name for the movie Suicide Squad, which like was very enjoyable in like it's bad kind of way, not like bad, but like, oh, this is a mess, and like that I enjoy stuff like that. But like it's just funny how Suicide Squad came out maybe 2 years after this, so even at the time Batman was coming out, maybe Suicide Squad was in pre-production / casting. Like it's possible, or within 6 months to a year, and they're like, Suicide Squad, Deadshot, Will Smith, I don't know, and it's just like, but then they're like, I don't know, like all these amazing Batman people, they're just like, put everything into that. Like this game wasn't cheap, clearly. Like you don't just get Mark Hamill and you're like, be Joker again. Here's $10.
John Noble, like they had to get separate. Like he is a big name, like in character acting and stuff. Like he's a pretty big name. Like they're not just paying nothing for him.
Yeah. So it's like, it's just so funny to me, like how inconsistent DC is. I've made the argument many times before, and I don't want to make this a DC versus Marvel thing, whereas Marvel is like very consistent, but because of that it bores me. Like there's like not a Marvel universe thing where you're like, that's the worst thing ever, but at the same point, like sometimes having the DC having like Dark Knight and then having Suicide Squad is like, at least it keeps you on your toes. And then something like Wonder Woman comes out and you're like, oh wow, you're like, this is gonna be so bad, and then you're like, oh, it's pretty good, like
and then Justice League comes out and you're like, but then like Harley Quinn comes out and you're like, it's pretty good, it goes back and forth and you never know what you're gonna get.
So it's very weird. Or like I guess the Snyder cut's gonna come out for Justice League at some point. I'm absolutely gonna watch that because Snyder.
Oh, that'll be so good.
But like it's just very funny to me, like they can just come out with something, and clearly Asylum, City, Night, they're all so quality. Origins, made by a different company, clearly just like, let's just put this out. Probably while the main team was working on Night, to be honest with you. That's probably why it happened. But it's just like so funny how this stuff works out. So yeah, for me, for sound, I'm actually going to bump that up a little bit higher than the stuff because it's just so excellent, and give it a 9.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, 9 on that.
It's just like, you just put so much money and everything into it. So last two, we're on Fun Factor. It's really fun. I mean, I guess the only thing I would ding it on is the Riddler stuff got boring for me, but I understand some people like that way to like expand the game. I don't know, like I really can't think of any like major dings. Like there's hard parts and sometimes frustrating parts, but like that's a game. Otherwise it's not a game. Otherwise it's just a virtual walkthrough. So I'm gonna bump it just slightly below sound, just because I think sound is the thing that really showcases this game, and give it an 8.75. I had so much fun. I don't know. It's just awesome.
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of fun, but I am going to give it an 8 only because, as I said, and this, is obviously a lot of this stuff is like, this is how my experience was, right? But I'll say that because of all the extra DLC that involved all the AR missions and trying to do those was very, very frustrating. And even though I played through the whole game and was felt like I was good at doing all the little parts, when you're tested on them, the I wouldn't have minded if they just were if they made the goals to get 3 stars, which is what you kind of want to get. If they made those goals easier to do, but then had online leaderboards where people could just battle it out to be the best most optimized perfection at it, I probably would have liked it a lot more, and I probably would have done them all. But they made the 3 stars people that are on the leaderboards aren't really getting much better than the 3-star level, which means to me that 3 stars is really hard to get. You have to get the whatever it is, you have to do it near perfection, and there's not much room for error, and that just made it very not fun for me because I'm not that level of I don't know, whatever you want to call it, Dark Souls play or something. Just that optimized gameplay where you just can't make a single mistake in something that's going to take you 5 minutes, which I guess you could liken it to even Guitar Hero or something like that, where you could it just has to be able to keep your attention to really try to perfect something, and it wasn't able to do that, and so I got a little frustrated. So I'm gonna ding it a little bit on fun factor for that, because it was fun for the whole game, and then when I got to the end and wanted to keep having fun, I immediately hit a wall of this isn't fun, and now I have to actually stop playing before I get really upset with the game.
I think that's fair, and I didn't even do those things,
yeah,
so
exactly.
It makes sense. Lastly, we have replayability. I've played this years ago, and I will say, to ding it a little bit, I haven't replayed it, but I guess to start off, a 1 would be it would cause me incredible pain. 10 is I instantly, just the second I finished, just started replaying it, which clearly I didn't do. So I'm gonna give this one, but I would very much enjoy replaying it in the future. I'll just, one of these days, I'll just get a hankering, or heck, if they start working on another one or whatever, I'll be all right, I want to do this again, and I'll very much enjoy it. So I'm gonna give it a 7.5 just because I haven't replayed it in all this time.
Yep. Okay, that seems good. Yeah, I would go I would probably go 6.75 on it, because I can imagine a world in which I would replay this, but because I tried to finish everything and got everything done that I would want to get done, I can only imagine going back and playing through just the main storyline, and that's it, because I did kind of burn myself out on all the extra stuff. So I'm gonna ding it a little bit more for that, just because I can't imagine playing through what I already played through. But imagining going through the story again, especially if there's a new one on the horizon, or if the new one comes out and sucks, and you kind of want to remember back to the old days or something, I can imagine revisiting it or whatever in the future.
So I just added up all of our scores. I came up to a total, obviously, aggregate score of 8.5. Which is higher than what I gave, or no, that's exactly what I gave Arkham City,
nice.
So that's funny. And Parker is at an 8.125, which is slightly below what he gave.
Yep.
In fact, when it comes down to this, it's all so close.
Yes.
Parker's Asylum's 8.25, City's 8.33, and this is 8.125. So that's mincing hairs to say that I didn't enjoy Asylum or Nightmare or whatever.
Sure. It was definitely, and I would say this if I would have played this, just as a little extra caveat with an asterisk, if I would have played this before I played City, this would outrank what I gave City by a lot. It's just because I am kind of coming off of City and the game, and I enjoyed the combat, and so that's where I was talking about dinging it for combat, because it wasn't as optimized as it was in City. So just little things like that.
So
but very close.
Officially, Arkham City is still our highest rated game. Very close, very close. We're talking 1.15. I will say I don't play many open world games.
Right.
I'm not a huge fan of them. I try them and it just doesn't work out. It's definitely my second favorite, just to Spider-Man on the PS4, which I think is just like, if I did that, it would get like probably a 9 across the board.
Exactly.
Like, the game
I
is
agree.
just like Arkham Knight is like amazing, but then like Spider-Man, which of course came like out 4 years after it, is just like perfect. So yeah, it's like like I said, I guess it would also make it my second favorite superhero game, which I don't play many of them, but
right.
You always gotta go with that.
Honestly, you can't have that Spider-Man game without having these Batman.
Absolutely.
Games
Now
they are 100% based on
that. Is a big thing. That is a big thing. Yeah,
100%.
and they really go well with each other. And another thing with the Spider-Man one is it was an exclusive, and exclusives always look and kind of can be focused better, which is why I'm actually I'm a fan of exclusives, just because like they can focus, the team can just be like, screw the Xbox or screw the PlayStation or whatever,
or PC or whatever.
Whatever. And it's like, screw it all, we're just making it for this hardware and we can focus on it, just this. Whereas, you know, they always have to keep that in mind. Oh, the Xbox does this instead, or the PC does this instead. So that's why PS4 exclusives look better than any other games, because they can just focus just on that.
Yeah, I love exclusives as well, and it's a shame that we're kind of moving away from that. I understand that it's like market-based, demographic, all that nonsense, but it just makes games more exciting. Like back in the day, there was Mario and Sonic. You picked one, and that's what you played. And it's like, why do we always have to not have that? Like, why can't we have that?
And I mean, this is a subject for another thing, but when a game doesn't go to, like, say, PC is like the big one,
right?
People just complain and complain. Like Red Dead came out like a year later on PC, and all people did was just complain and complain. And like Last of Us, of course, isn't going to come out on PC, you know, because it's a Sony product, and it's like complain. It's like, you know, back then that was a big thing, and it's like, you know, again, you would pick, you know, Mario and Yoshi or Sonic and Vector Man or whatever,
exactly.
And it's just like, that's a thing. So I like almost all the PC games I like are PC exclusives, because they wouldn't really work well on, you know, like horror games and stuff like that, like point and click horror games, and and like first person horror games wouldn't work really well on
Empires or something.
and like they wouldn't work on it, so I do it on PC. Anyway, so this was episode, I believe it was 66, Game Review 22. We are also going to be later recording episode 67, Game Review 23. And the only hint I will give you with that one is it is not going to be quite as highly lauded as this one.
It might be my.
I have stats.
Yours.
I have stats for you.
It might be my least favorite game of all time.
I have stats for you, so we'll see if it can compare to the worst one. So anyway, this is one of the best ones, though.
Yes.
And we thank you for watching. We appreciate it, and we'll be back to you for maybe in the future more Batman games.
Woo!
Thank you for watching/listening.